It is time to bring in Brian Ross. Brian joins us on a Thursday morning with real news, and we welcome in Brian this morning. Good morning, Brian.
Good morning to you, Marshall.
Well,
a bit of news going on. We start with the New York governor, I suppose.
You know, it's one of those things, and you can't look at this as a Democrat or a Republican or a conservative or a liberal. You have to look at the fact that New York did the right thing. They went through the Attorney General's office, they interviewed people, and came out with findings that are absolutely damning. And it puts New York in a position where, and then I don't think what Governor Cuomo, and you can give me your read on this, when he came out with his statement afterwards, I just think by that statement, he intensified the pressure on him.
Well, his instinct is to fight, but the report with so many witnesses, 170 or so, and written with such clarity, I think, really makes it clear that they've got the goods. And as we've seen in the last 24 hours, he's been abandoned by every last supporter of the unions, Democratic Party leader Jacobs. So he's got no supporters, and the question is really, how does he fight this out? He may look at polls and may think that he can win in the election, but according to the reports I'm seeing, the impeachment process in the state assembly could begin within the next week or so, and then you could well have a trial by early October.
You know, I just look back at what happened to previous New York governors, and for somebody that was involved in a governor of New York that was involved in a black book because of having sexual relations with prostitutes, this is far worse than that. And what I don't understand is he comes from a politically astute family, and there's got to be a time where you just say to yourself, you know, let's get out of this with as much respect and self-respect and dignity as possible.
I think you're right about that. And to be the second governor, only one other governor's ever been impeached in New York, to be the second governor to be impeached and to bring total and final sort of disgrace to his name. But you can't imagine, given, as you say, the political astuteness of Cuomo and the people around him, that they're going to do that. I think the larger question for him is, he now faces criminal investigations by at least 4 district attorneys in New York, Westchester, and upstate in Albany, and a couple other places, Nassau, that, you know, is a real threat to him, that he could go to prison for some of these charges. They're mostly misdemeanors, but, you know, once they begin to investigate, look out.
It's just a real sad story, and I just like I said, I sit here in amazement as just, you know, cut and run and get out if you can. And once again, it's also bad for the state of New York. I mean, people talk about the corruption in Albany. The major Democratic leaders have wound up in jail. Now you have the governor that once again is looking, and I don't think there's any doubt about it. I think he's going to be impeached. There's no doubt about it.
If he doesn't resign, there's clearly he's going to be impeached. The trial would then take a 2/3 vote of the Senate plus members of the highest court, the Court of Appeals. But yes, there's no. I don't think there's any bright end of the tunnel sort of light that he can see in this. And it's just a question now, really. We'll see what he does in the next 48 hours. But while his instinct is to fight, and he's a very able political infighter, I think he's out of options.
And you go from the governor of New York to the governor of Florida. And the governor of Florida, I'm not accusing him of anything like that, but you look at the governor of Florida, and he is so stuck in his position that he can't see any way out of it. There's even other Republican governors in very, very red states that have finally said, you know what? We've got to do something to curb this, but Governor DeSantis is just not budging on this at all.
And you could argue that what he's doing is even worse than Cuomo. He's putting lives at risk in Florida. There's no doubt about that. And as you mentioned, Governor Asa Hutchinson of Arkansas now regrets signing a bill that prohibited the mandating of masks. He's hoped they'll repeal that bill because he's understanding what's happening. Hospitals in Louisiana, Arkansas, Florida are just overflowing. It's like the worst days of the pandemic that we saw a year and a half ago. So, you know, it's what DeSantis is doing, hard to know. I guess he's trying to position himself for a run for presidency, but I don't think it's helping. I think it's just terrible policy and it's an insult to the people of Florida.
Well, when you say that, all these people that people call pro-Trumpers, they're not pro-Trumpers. They're pro-Trumper voters. They're going to back the president, and deep in their thought process, they don't think there's any way that he's going to be nominated, and they want to be first in line to try to get those voters.
That's right, and if that's his calculation, that's why he's doing this. That's shame on him, because he's putting lives at risk with this. His policies there that sort of continue to treat us like something we can easily deal with, and this Delta variant is a very, very mean mother. I'll tell you that.
And by having all this back and forth, it gives credence to the people who want to pass along these false stories about COVID-19. Like I said, I'm not going to sit here and question somebody who, on religious grounds or other grounds, has always opposed vaccinations. But by having all this happen, and with having some governors do this, it just increases more fake information that gets out on social media.
It does, but I think we also have to consider the CDC has not been as clear as it could be, and the fact that the FDA has not given a formal final approval to the vaccines, it just plays into the hands of those who have doubts, and one who will spew false information, but other people who have legitimate doubts. Why is it still considered experimental, not provisional? Why isn't it formally approved? And I think that once they do that, and they're pushing that ahead, I guess by the end of this month, that will change everything. But, there's some blame we can point at to CDC and even to the Biden administration for, they've done a good job, but there's some gaps there, I think, in how they've handled this.
It's just one of those stories, nightmare stories that just seems to go on. Now, I have to bring this up, and it really isn't an important story, but I never thought I'd see an ex-president of the United States cheer when our teams lose gold medals because of statements that they made. It just shows the absurd state of politics in our country.
Well, and this, this is a pro-USA. They chant USA, and he cheers the defeat. That's just, it's insulting. It's a shame. It's disgraceful, frankly.
All right, and maybe Joe Biden is learning that maybe you cannot get things done in Washington, because he really now, in the past 24 hours, has changed his tone with some of the governors, like Governor DeSantis, and what's going on with COVID-19. He's finally getting his back up.
You're essentially saying lead, follow, or get out of the way.
Yeah.
And DeSantis say, well, I'm going to be in your way. You're trying to take away the rights of Florida parents. But the issue is the health and safety of children, and let's rely on the science, not on some political guy who may want to run for president, and that's what it's at. But I do see, Biden is toughening his approach to that, and some of the approval polls, he's still doing well, but his overall approval on handling the pandemic has slipped. Not really because of what he's done, but because of the fact that the Delta variant is, sweeping the country, and there are so many people who are now being hospitalized, some increasing deaths, almost entirely people who are unvaccinated.
All right, now I'm going to get away from something, and we're going to go to a place that is, I think, your happy spot. And let's talk about what's happening this weekend in Sharon. We have the On the Green Arts and Crafts Festival. We have the Historical Society getting together, doing something all outside. But to me, something that about 5 or 7 years ago I didn't think was going to happen is actually going to happen. And there's going to be the ceremony for the groundbreaking of the addition to the Hotchkiss Library.
It's very exciting. And this edition, we've raised a lot of money already, raised more, but it has been through all the approval processes. The board has been great. We've got a great construction and sort of building committee led by David Moore, who has guided this so well. And it's just a beautiful thing that they have created. QA&M is the architecture firm handling it. And we'll break ground at 11 o'clock Saturday morning. I hope you'll come, Marshall. It's going to be an important thing. And it does a couple of things. One, it provides easy access for people who have disabilities, have a hard time with stairs, people who are in wheelchairs, moms with strollers, dads with strollers, So there's a lot there. It also kind of opens up and allows us to sort of reinvigorate the great. It's an architectural gem, designed by Bruce Price, who at the time, the late 1800s, was America's leading architect. It's just a beautiful thing, and nobody has ruined it. Nobody went in there and kind of pulled all the things out. We're trying to keep its glory and kind of restore it to its original glory. And I think we've done that. And there'll be some tours on Saturday morning. Come in. You can see the library's been emptied out. You can come in and see what our plans are. And I urge everyone to do that. If you haven't supported it, please think about supporting it.
You know, I just remember, I forget how many years ago, it might have been 10 or 12 years ago when the subject came up about adding on to the library. And there was a lot of opposition to it back then, a lot of opposition to it. And I'm just so glad that has faded into the background, because the Hotchkiss Library is one of those things in Sharon, kind of like the Sharon Playhouse, that is just an institution that deserves to grow and be relevant for the next 100 years.
Absolutely, it's a beacon of literacy and culture. And I was on the board back in 2008, I think it was, when the original plan came. And the shortcoming there was it was such a huge addition that there are many people who got their backs up about putting that on the green. Well, in the decade or so since that time, the need for space is substantially different given the digital use of books, etc. And what we really focused on was how do we make it easy for our patrons to get in the library, those who have a hard time with steps. And that's where we started. And then how do we restore the glory of our great library? We're going to really gussy it up. It's going to be great. And I'm very, very excited about it. I hope to be there myself, put a shovel in the ground.
All right. Well, I wanted to take a portion of this just so people, once again, as a reminder, that on Saturday there's a lot going on in Sharon, but not to miss the groundbreakings. Are you going to have one of the shovels in your hand?
I think I might. They say I will, so we'll see. The treasurer of the board, so.
All right, well, Brian,
they want to keep the money. They got to give me a shovel. No, that, and hats off to all the people who have already contributed to the campaign, and the great town fathers and town mothers, I guess, on the various boards that have given approvals, and the selectmen and the Board of Finance who have always supported us and continue to support us. So it's a real community effort, and lots of differences on lots of things. But here, I think we've got a unanimity that this is something that's really going to be great for Sharon. It's fantastic. I'm very excited about it, as you can tell, and I appreciate you bringing it up.
And one other thing, folks, the fundraising isn't over. So if you want to fundraise and you want to help out, hey, go to hotchkisslibrary.org and you'll find out more ways. But you can still donate right now because, believe you me, there's going to be fundraising needed for quite a while. So people get involved.
Yeah.
Brian,
we expect to have it done in a year. By the time of the next Arts and Crafts show, we'll have our famous author book signing event.
All right. Brian, have a great weekend, and we'll speak to you next week.
You too, Marshall. Great. You bet. Bye-bye.
Brian Ross and Real News this morning here on The Breakfast Club on Robin Hood Radio.